Thank you for watching this. This is Group 4 Media and Technology with Piper, Maya, Katie, and Danielle. So we'll get started just to talk about the implications of what media and technology have done for sports all around the world.
To begin, obviously, media and technology have reshaped the world of sports in a drastic number of ways, and it's very interesting for our generation because we have been able to live through a lot of the tech developments, and we've been able to see the ways in which media and technology have improved sport. So, a brief history. Over the years, of course, lots of technology has been received with skepticism. These major technological advancements in the world of sport include electronic scoreboards, which the first record of an electronic scoreboard being used was 1908, and Harvard claims the first electric scoreboard, but basically they unveiled the nation's first electronic scoreboard during a game. Okay, I don't know. And the inventor was from Chicago. His name was George A. Baird. So anabolic steroids were first produced in the 1930s, and it wasn't long before they made their way to gyms and locker rooms across the country. The first record of them being used in the professional sports world was during the 1954 Olympics. And then televised sporting changed the world of sports forever, and it's still changing today. On May 17th, 1939, the U.S. first televised sporting event was a baseball game between the Columbia Lions and the Princeton Tigers. It was broadcast by NBC from Columbia's Bakersfield. Today, the sports media, most notably television, is more powerful than ever. As an example, approximately 75% of NFL revenues come from television rights fees, and the TV contract is basically considered the lifeblood of many major sports across different leagues. So then we have the invention of the shot clock in 1954. This came into the sports world after basketball fans and actually ultimately it was the owner of the Syracuse Nationals who wanted to force teams to pick up the pace of the games because they were really low scoring at the time. So on April 22nd in 1954, the NBA owners voted to implement a 24-second shot clock. Then instant replay was introduced in 1963. The first instant replay was during the Army-Navy football game in 1963, but the current system began in 1999, bringing in the opportunity to challenge on-field calls of plays. And then in 1998, sports saw the improvement of HD TV. This technology was introduced in the U.S. in the early 1900s, and it was made official in 1993 by the Digital HD TV Grand Alliance. Today, the DVR allows commercial skipping and better, more convenient viewing of sports for people across the country. In 2001, Hawkeye technology was introduced into sports. Hawkeye is a computer system that's used across numerous sports like cricket, tennis, badminton, and a number of other sports as well. It visually tracks the trajectory of the ball and displays a profile of its statistically most likely path as a moving image. The system was first used as a test match between Pakistan and England at the Lord's Cricket Ground in April of 2001, and it was first used in the tennis U.S. Open in 2006. So then in 2003, player tracking became very popular in the world of sports. The first known use of player statistics and data to make personal decisions was in 2003, and as detailed in the book that we've been reading for class, Moneyball, a popular type of player tracking is known as sabermetrics. Today, basically every major professional sports team either has an analytics department or an analytics expert on staff. Player tracking evaluates the efficiency of a team by analysis of player movement. The NBA was the first professional league to start gaining traction for player tracking. They started to implement it in 2013 to 14 NBA season. And then in 2012, and really today because it's still developing, we see the introduction of virtual reality being used in the sports world. So a company called Oculus Rift was bought by Facebook in 2014 for $2 billion. It's a VR company, and the VR movement gained momentum rapidly after this deal, and today we use it to replay and analyze the game from different perspectives, prepare players for games without requiring their excessive presence on the field, and a host of other things that are bound to change in the near future. So, technology's current impact, media and technology currently has a huge impact. Some of the most notable impacts are the analysis of performance, the improved quality of feedback, electronic timing, improved design of equipment and apparel, better viewing experience of sports, fantasy sports, and constant updates. So we see the analysis of sport performance enabling coaches to greatly improve the quality of feedback to players. There's an increased accuracy in time measurements of sport performance. Electronic timing controlled by computers is used to measure performance times of athletes in a host of many sports, which is obviously really important to time-based sports. And it goes so far as even to measuring reaction time and improvements in the design of sport equipment and apparel. This has really changed the game in terms of safety. Providing spectators with a better viewing of sport performance is essential to stadium experience and also has allowed many leagues to diversify and hone in on different forms of revenue by making the experience more personal to each fan. It allows for a higher accessibility for fans because today we all know that tickets to major sporting events are extremely expensive, and by putting sports on TV and on YouTube and allowing people to view from inside their homes, it alleviates the need for people to actually buy those expensive tickets and go to the stadiums in person. It helps fans enjoy their favorite pastimes in new and more immersive ways. Fantasy sports has become a $1 billion a year industry, which is extremely profitable and wouldn't be possible without media and technology. And today, anyone with a smartphone basically can download applications and different apps that make following sports as easy as receiving a text message. People are constantly updated, and ESPN Mobile and other websites have made it extremely simple to follow scores and be updated on analysis and their favorite players at all times.
In realizing that a lot of these are really congruent with what Piper just mentioned as far as the current impact, all of the influences that she mentioned that technology and media have had are the same that are going around the entire world. The analytics have increased, the accuracy of these analytics have increased. Referees are able to make better calls, like she mentioned, as well, because there's instant replay. And of course, we've seen the accessibility of improved equipment and apparel grow. And actually, it started a movement within our regular culture that now people wear, wear athletic wear almost all the time because you've got more leisurely, cultural values and things as far as what you can wear. Even in the past, like people would have to be dressed up if, they were going to certain places, and now they call it athletic leisure, and people of all age groups feel comfortable enough wearing it. So it's even changed society a little bit that way. Better sports viewing, like she mentioned as well, it's also tailored to the individual. And then finally, it's really caused a more unified world. You can see your favorite sports teams all over the place, but you can even become a fan of a sports team from across the world just because of the accessibility that have to watch it. You don't have to be from Europe to watch soccer over there, or to be a fan of one of the teams over there. You can have it right at your fingertips and really gain access to that fan base from all over the world. And as far as the future impact of technology in sports, a lot of the experts have been talking about the fact that fan engagement technology is really where the most money is going to be spent. Over 77.6% of the expert investors said that that's where the money is going to be going in 2020 and beyond. Some of the other sectors that are important to mention are athlete performance technology and stadium experience technology. I know we've talked a lot about them in class, but I thought it was interesting that fan engagement technology was going to be the highest hitter. And what that really entails is the live streaming, gaming and esports gambling, which we've talked about in class, media distribution and content platforms. And they also mentioned that over $2.5 billion was invested in esports in 2018. And so that's going to be, a big sector coming about very soon.
In regards to the business impact of media, like Katie said, it's really unified the world as well. You're able to access basically anything from anywhere. So that's really made it easy for sports and entertainment to broadcast what they have to share. Specifically, social media has had a big impact. And then again, TV programming and rights. And then you have how they market those events and they market their TV programs. There's very easy communication with fans. NBA players go on NBA Live and they're able to talk to fans and answer questions, which really just, brings everyone together and allows you to kind of relate with them. Within media, there's also like the growing market. So Apple and Amazon are going to have a more of a hold basically on the media industry because they're able to show these on their apps and everything, which even makes it more localized for people at home. And then in regards to technology, a lot of equipment has begun to be advanced. There's also newer sports stadiums, which I'll talk about later, and then cognitive computing. Piper touched on this a little bit, analyzing social media and brand awareness, and you can also analyze the players. There's facial recognitions to keep up player stats. In the NBA, they can tell you how many shots someone is taking or what plays they've done. There's also simulators in VR. And then also team efficiency. You're able to manage your team better and just track players' wellness like we talked about in class. There's different apps where players can plug in how they're feeling that day and everything. So the business side of it is really going to be hit, and it'll be interesting to see how it grows in the future. In regards to some major players in media, Fox Sports, ESPN, the Hockey Network, Football Network, the Baseball Network, NBC Sports, and then UFC for boxing are obviously some of the more notable players. And then in terms of social media, you have Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, and then some of the big sports pages are like Bleacher Report, House of Highlights, and ESPN, and then they'll just talk about how the player performed that game or what shoes they're wearing and how they're relating or what they've done that day, and it's just pretty cool to keep up with all the athletes. Another big thing is sports betting. The most popular sites for that are DraftKings and FanDuel. So far, 14 out of 50 states have legalized sports betting, and they basically want to increase prop bets, which are basically bets that you can bet on one play specifically, not the entire game. And then possibility of sponsorship deals with leagues, and then also 5G wireless. We've talked about that in class as well. And just seeing how AT&T and Verizon are going to bring that to stadiums and basically who's going to have the bigger hold on the wireless company in general. In regards to ESPN, just a quick history. In 1997, they created their first internet venture. So they basically started what we know now as the most reliable sports media company. In 2001, they made a deal with MSN to be their sole sports channel provider for 3 years, and this really brought them out into the forefront. In 2006, they created a mobile version. This ended up failing and actually cost them $150 million. In 2009, they kind of localized sites in different states in the U.S., and they were able to just hone in on even more in specific sports in these states, and they created more of a network. In 2012, they completely rebranded themselves, and they also launched ESPN SoccerNet and ESPN FC, which are now the biggest soccer destinations. Just on the business side of ESPN, so they're owned by ESPN Inc. They're headquartered in Bristol, Connecticut. They have a revenue. They had a revenue in 2018 of about $10.2 billion. They have over 2 million paid subscribers. In the U.S. specifically, they have about 86 million. They have so many mobile apps, and they have national and international channels, and they also provide many streaming services. In the future, they're planning to maintain and create new relationships. They're planning to keep broadcasting live because that's something that a lot of people are going to look for. They don't want to watch something after the fact. And they're also trying to increase their mobile app use and then also move to streaming. Some sports media companies, ESPN was previously mentioned. Then we have NBC Sports, which basically broadcasts Sunday Night Football, hockey, NASCAR driving, and the Olympics. And then we have Fox Sports. They're within the United States and also internationally. Their app is Fox Sports Go, and they host the Major League and NFL. They also do sports betting options, which is a newer thing for TV programming. In NFL, they have football from the college to the professional level, and it's shown within the United States and also internationally in some countries. UFC, they're streaming an on-demand service, and they're in about 174 countries and territories, and they have almost 500,000 subscribers. And then we have NBC Golf, which is just the golf channel, and they have the U.S. Open rights, and they only run in the United States.
Moving on to some of the manufacturers who made the largest tech advancements and the most influential tech advancements in sports. Piper also did mention the shot clock, but I thought that was a really cool and important thing to mention, especially because we're so used to seeing clocks running in all sports now. And so really it was just the owner of the Syracuse national team, like she mentioned, Danny Bison. And it was really because they wanted to keep with pace of play, but they also saw players running the clock. And I can imagine that it would have been difficult for players to even know what time and how much time they had left anyway. So this was really an advancement both for the players, the viewers, and the coaches. As far as the helmet microphone goes, there were originally two inventors, John Campbell and George Charles. And they pitched the idea to the coach of the Cleveland Browns. It was then shot down because they kept it in secret for a while, and so they were the only team to really have that going on. And then later it was implemented back again in 1994, and now obviously it's widespread across the NFL. Then Piper also mentioned Hawkeye technology. One in specific that they really did well with was in the NHL. They implemented the use of 6 cameras just to see the angles of the goals that are going on. They also did that with soccer. And so that's been huge for the goal line technology industry. And the original implementation of this technology was in 1993. And then a couple of just really quick facts were the fact that the metal tennis racket was actually created in 1889, but widespread use began in 1967 when Wilson Sporting Goods started making these. And then finally, the first titanium golf clubs were made by Callaway in 1990 and then started to really become widespread. And now you would never use, a wooden golf club again. As far as the major tech moments in sport, we did talk about the Beijing Olympics opening ceremony in 2008. And I wanted to include some video clip of both this and Michael Jackson's Super Bowl halftime show. But one for the Olympic ceremony opening, it's hard to even, know where to start. The entire thing was so incredible. And so just choosing a fragment of it, I didn't think would justify. And then as far as the Super Bowl halftime show, the NFL has actually restricted all rights to be able to save any kind of YouTube documentation or video documentation of the halftime shows because they own all the rights. So that's media and tech for you right there. They've got their legal strategists all over it.
So as far as data analytics go, I mentioned a little bit earlier, but the market for sports analytics is expected to reach almost $4 billion by 2022. And we've already seen this grow exponentially as soon as it was introduced into sports. There's a video that I included that kind of gives, I think, in my opinion, a really good snapshot into what data analytics actually do behind the scenes of a game. But if viewers want to watch it on their own, they can. Some major points to make about data analytics in sport are that it has elevated the game in terms of scouting and player development. Nearly every team in the NBA today has hired data analysts and full-time staff working with the numbers to work alongside coaches and front office staff. The NBA specifically uses a shot tracking technology called RSPCT, and it was developed by an Israeli startup. It's a sensor that attaches to the backboard and identifies exactly where the ball hits the rim or the basket. It was integrated into SMT's graphics system to offer fans a deeper look at each competitor's shooting accuracy and patterns. It takes into account even details like the height of the player, the release point, and where it hits the basket, and then extrapolates data back from there. Data analytics also allows sport organizations to detect patterns in digital engagement, such as online sports viewing, to understand what and when fans are watching via apps, logins, and online video views. Today, stadiums and leagues are creating more immersive experiences via augmented reality, as I kind of mentioned earlier, for fans that, say, can't buy a ticket and can't actually attend the physical in-person stadium events. So baseball, as I also mentioned before, uses sabermetrics, and Moneyball is a classic example of how data analytics began to change the world of sport. Basketball uses the program RSPCT. Soccer, which would be shown in this video, uses My Coach Elite, and it delivers data analytics based on wearable technology that the players actually use. So major players in the data analytics world are Stats, Crossover, and Sportradar. These are all data analytics companies. So Stats covers 45 different sports across 600 leagues globally. It delivers sports data and provides statistics for leading sports entertainment providers like ESPN, Yahoo, and FanDuel. The company's data provides everything from pregame and predictive data to in-game data and individual player projections. Crossover is a software that allows you to upload game film to the platform and then gives teams insights on individual player performance as well as team performance as a whole. They tag and pull data from game film and generate customized reports. And we actually use this here at Rollins for the women's lacrosse team. So I thought that it's really interesting that I've actually had personal experience with it. It's used across high school, college, and professional sports alike. Sportradar covers 40 sports across 800 leagues globally and is partnered with professional leagues like the NFL, NBA, and NHL. And Sportradar provides real-time, daily, and historical data for widely used fantasy sports apps, websites, and sports analytics platforms.
The revenue streams that have been created because of technology and media in sports are really starting to grow and to trend in a few different ways here. And actually, it's very relevant to our presentation now because the future of the revenue in sport is for media rights. They surpassed the three major sources of revenue from 2014 to 2017. So now they're going to be worth a predicted amount extremely above those of the gate revenues, sponsorship, and merchandising. They now make up 30% of all sports related revenue. And currently, the national contracts for the NFL and the MLS are up in 2022. So it's said that the media rights might actually continue to grow with how much they cost. And then finally, part of this is going to be the legalization of sports betting. The NFL is said to increase by 18% for the media rights just for this legalization of the betting. And then the betting industry is said to be worth over $6.3 billion by 2023. For the globalization of sports, we really see this being implemented through mobile devices, laptops, and computers, and television and broadcast. These are the devices of the century. And in a really good quote by Michael Perlman, sports have always been the ultimate unifier, transcending geographic borders, rising above partisan politics, and enabling multiple audiences and generations to find alignment. The little-known secret behind this global unifier is technology. So obviously, like Piper mentioned before, and I know Maya mentioned too, through the cell phones and tablets, you have access to everything. The social media, the streaming, the content, websites you can share amongst each other freely, and also through laptops and computers, you've got access to the same exact thing. But you've got even more access to online sources from, ESPN and things like this. And then for television and broadcast, the effects have been substantial. The world of sports has changed, and the revenues have increased just because of the broadcasting rights that we've discussed all over the class period and also this presentation. And then finally, most of the major sports are broadcasted in over 200 countries in over 40 languages that you can find over online or through the television.
So broadcasting has changed the tech space and the sports space in many ways. I'll go through a little bit of timeline as to the biggest changes in the broadcasting world. So in 1920, we saw the first widespread radio broadcasts being implemented. It was first a football game over the radio, and it was a match between University of Texas and Texas A&M on November 25th, 1920. Sports didn't appear on TV in color until August 26, 1955. The first sport that was shown in color was tennis, and it was a Davis Cup match between the US and Australia covered by NBC. So during the 1975 World Series, technology improved enough to the point where stats could be updated during the course of the game, and then they were put on archaic data devices that actually were used as on-screen graphics. I have the wrong date on the PowerPoint, but that's okay. And then September 7th, 1979 was the birthday of the groundbreaking channel that decided to show nothing but sports 24 hours a day. This was ESPN. They first aired in 1979. And then in 1994, sports saw the introduction of satellite TV. And then in 1999, the rise of TiVo and DR, which has certainly been used for uses independent of sport, but the TiVo and DVR assure busy fans can get their fix whenever is most convenient for them, and allowed a lot of today's culture of watching sports with friends over food and in people's homes, that wouldn't be the same without the rise of TiVo and DVR. In 2003, we saw the introduction of HD television, and obviously this has changed for everybody who has ever watched TV. It just makes watching sports and everything else more enjoyable.
We do realize, though, that the free program we're using to record this presentation is going to cut us off, and so we will allow the slides to play for you, but the rest of this will have to be independent reading. So we really thank you for joining us and for watching the presentation and listening to it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. And there is a Kahoot at the end and some videos that you'll be able to see when you actually get the link for the Google Slides. So thank you so much for joining us today.